Hi there, Gary Jenkins here. Just wanted to share with you all my feelings in regards to Bob Proctor. I don't know if most of you know, but Bob Proctor passed away last week. He was born in 1934, and the announcement of his death reached me on the 5th of February, and it was actually made on the 4th of February. He was a wonderful Canadian. He was perhaps the most atypical person to achieve such a pinnacle of success. Bob kind of grew up in a home where achievement was not really applauded too much. Just go along to get along kind of thought processes. And he came across a record from what I recall from his story, and it talked about, positive attitude, achieving success, etc. And he also received a book along in his wife on Think and Grow Rich. He probably read the book 10,000 times in his life, and it sunk into him. And he realized that it wasn't your education, it wasn't your luck, it was what you decided to do and how you put your energy forward, because wherever your energy is directed, that's where your motion and activity is. And Bob Proctor went from basically doing menial work with no education to running a cleaning firm that he established. And in his first year, he claimed that he made over 100,000 Canadian dollars running the operation. But that's evidence in and of itself, but it's not the most important thing about Bob Proctor. The important thing is Bob Proctor would listen to success materials. He would read success materials until they actually incorporated themselves into himself. And I recall sitting down in a room where Bob was speaking, and he spoke about the first time he realized that the fact that he had listened to a long playing record. Now, a lot of people listening to me may never have actually listened to an LP in their life. They were quite large. They played at 33 1/3 revolutions per minute. And they usually were about 30 minutes long. Maybe you'd find one that got recorded at 40 minutes long, or some were even an hour. But usually the average is about a 30-minute recording, 35 minutes, something along those lines. But Bob Proctor listened to both sides of this album. It was a talk given by, I don't remember who the gentleman was, but he claims that he listened to it about 1,900 times, when suddenly an event happened in his life and he realized he could act and think differently than the person that he was raised to be. He heard in his mind before he spoke a phrase, and he said it. And he was amazed by the outcome of the result of him having said something differently than what he would normally have said. And he decided this stuff really works. And he continued. And eventually he went to Nightingale Convent and took a position in sales with it. Now, those were his early days. Back, we're talking 1960s. But, Earl Nightingale literally began this whole self-help movement in the mid-50s. And this created this massive ability for people to improve themselves. And Bob Proctor became a disciple of it. Now, I will bet you that all of you have seen Bob Proctor. If you're listening to me right now, you have probably seen Bob Proctor. You may not remember it, but I'm pretty sure that a lot of people have seen the Burns movie of The Secret, where they're talking about the law of attraction. Bob Proctor is one of these people that they refer to where he speaks about the power of the law of attraction, and that it's very real and it's always working. So, you know, you've probably been influenced, you've probably felt excited, you've probably heard of Bob Proctor, you've probably even heard his voice. But let me tell you two stories about Bob Proctor from me. The first one is Bob Proctor. I went to a seminar that he gave. And during the seminar, he was kind of like telling his story, talking about how people can move ahead. Really, what he was doing was selling a week-long seminar that was going to be held in a month or two. During his discussions, he stopped, he got a kind of a weird look on his face, and he said, I have a story in my life I need to tell this group right now because somebody in this room needs to hear it. And it was interesting to me because I thought, oh yeah, that's a real good ploy. You know, I'm sure that whatever he says, there will be somebody in this room that will say that they want to hear it. This guy's, he must be a charlatan. That kind of a thought process running, because I was really negative back in those days. And so I started having those kind of thought processes. And one of the struggles that I was dealing with in my life at that moment was my two oldest children had gone off to university. One had dropped out, and the other one was a fight to keep her in. And if it wasn't for sports and a scholarship as an athlete to stay in, she probably would have dropped out as well. And I had 4 more kids coming down the pike, and I wanted them all to go to university. That was a big myth at the time. Go to university, get yourself a good degree, find a good company, job for life, you'll be set up, everything will be wonderful. We know that all that is bogus. It isn't true. But I believed it at the time. Everybody believed it. It was a mantra. And Bob Proctor said, you know, when I grew up, people would say, do you want to go to college? Do you want to go to university? And most kids said no. And he was thinking about this. He had children. He saw other families going through the disappointment of their children choosing not to go to anything beyond high school, wanting to just get a job. And he wanted all of his children to go to university. And as he spoke to these people, he realized the question being asked was the wrong question. Do you want to go? You need to pre-assume that they're going to go. And so the question has to focus on, you're going to university, but how do I say you're going to university without sounding like I'm making you go? And Bob Proctor said, and all of a sudden it dawned on me, the question to ask is, so which university do you intend to go to? It pre-assumes that you're going to university, but it isn't a command that you go to your university. And it gives you a sense that you have free choice. You can go to any university you want. Which one do you choose to go to? And I swear when he said that, it resonated like lightning through my whole body. I was absolutely shocked because if there was somebody in the room that needed to hear that story, it was me. It was me. And I came home and I started asking that question. Where is it that you want to go to university? My family changed overnight in regards to the thoughts of what university I want to go to. including the two that were like resistant to even being in university who were in university. They came back and they said, Dad, that's really a great question. Maybe I picked the wrong school to go to. I would rather have gone to this. And that just changed the total dynamics. That just changed the total dynamics. So that's one where he personally impacted my life with one of his stories. The second person who impacted my life was not Bob Proctor directly. Bob Proctor had a remarriage in his life to a woman named Linda. Linda, lovely lady. I believe she was from Florida in the United States. And she told me that when she met Bob, she was attending one of his seminars that was directly designed to help people who were insurance agents to increase their productivity and their income. Linda said something to me like, I was making about $35,000 a year. I might have the numbers all wrong, but forgive me. I'm just trying to remember the story because it was kind of like told almost in passing to me. Well, it was told directly to me, but it was kind of like, when I first met Bob, he was teaching this seminar. I was making this much money. I felt like I should be able to earn maybe twice as much. I should be up in the $70,000 a year income bracket, but I didn't know how to get there. I didn't understand what to do. And she said, and Bob was talking to us and giving us assignments. And he talked to us in person a little bit. He came up to me and he said, he says, you're doing everything that I can see right, except for one thing. She said, what's that? She says, what time of day is usually your first appointment? And she says, well, usually I don't really have an appointment until 11 or maybe even 12. She says, which is typical for my office. And he says, no. He says, Linda, if you want to make over $100,000 a year as an insurance agent, your first appointment needs to be 8:30 every morning. You don't go home until you have booked 8:30 the next morning. And she said, I wanted to say in my mind, you're crazy. I don't believe you. But I also realized this is Bob Proctor. And if he says do 8:30 in the morning, your first appointment, then he's right. And she said, and she said, I got 8:30 appointments every morning. And when I got that 8:30 appointment set up, I suddenly had 9, 10, 11, 12. She said, I started booking them all day long, whereas before it might be a small window into the evening. She says, I was booking them all done. And not only that, I was done. I had made enough money that I could actually go home at a decent hour and not stay in the office late, making these phone calls, trying to get 8 and 9 o'clock appointments at night with people. She said, I was getting 8:30 in the morning appointments. And by the time I actually made it back in the office, sometime in the afternoon, I had made more money than anybody in the office had made all month. She said, I was making a lot of money. And she said, and that came directly because Bob told me what I was doing wrong in my mindset, which was nobody will have an appointment with you before 11, maybe noon, to talk insurance. No, people will talk to you at 8:30 in the morning, and they will. And she said, and there were only a few days that I ever did not have an 8:30 appointment in the morning. And both of those times, I know I was responsible because I didn't want to push, because I didn't want to go to an 8:30 meeting. I just learned so much about Bob Proctor from that piece of advice he gave to Linda, whom he later married. And I have so much respect for this couple in total. I guess I have a third story I want to tell you. As you know, I come from Canada, in Western Canada, and one point I ran into a woman in the United States who had been living in Canada. And this was before I ran into Bob Proctor after I ran into Bob Proctor for the first time. And I was very impressed with him. I have to admit, Bob Proctor, from the moment you meet the guy, there's an energy about him. He literally is so interesting because he sees himself as a spiritual being having a human experience. And he sees this entire experience as transitory because people come and go, but your energy remains and you'll be back. And that earth is just a big teaching ground, and you just have to learn the secret of how to be successful in life. And anybody can learn it. And one of the things, and it's all mindset. And one of the things that I recall from this woman was she said she had heard Bob Proctor on a tape. And she said, I know he lives around here in Toronto somewhere. She said, and she lived in Toronto, Canada. And she said, I just would love to meet him. I would love to bump into him into a grocery store or something. I would just love to meet him. And she said, and it became a burning obsession in my mind. How do I bump into him? How do I meet him? How do I, whatever? And she said, one day the mailman put letters through the box, and on one of the letters was the name Bob Proctor. And she said, that's really strange. I've been thinking a lot about him, but why would I get his mail? And then she looked at the address. The address was the same house number as her house number, but 3 blocks away. She now had Bob Proctor's address. And so she decided, instead of sending it back through the postal saying wrong address, send to this one as posted or whatever, she hand delivered it over to Bob Proctor's house. She talked about how she got all dressed up, made sure her makeup was perfect, that she had on her nice clothes and things like that, and was just going to seem like, oh, this was just dropped off at my house by mistake, and I'm just casually just dropping it over. She knocked on the door, and she said, Bob Proctor opened the door. And she said, hi, I'm your neighbor, and this was misdirected to me. And Bob Proctor said, well, thank you very much. He says, it's a very cold day. Would you like to come in? And she said, I got to go into the front, have about a 5-minute conversation. He says, you're not just really a neighbor, you're several blocks away. She says, yes, but I like to walk. But she's talked about how, and he is as warm and as wonderful as he sounds like on the tapes. And that's true. Bob was absolutely authentic. I just want to share one more story about him, because I want you to know the character of this man. He was so congruent. I was in a very small group where somebody said they were actually interviewing Bob Proctor for some event, and they had a tape running, so everybody had to be very quiet. And the interviewer said, now, ladies and gentlemen, this is Bob Proctor. I think they called him Robert. And he says, oh, please, everybody calls me Bob. And he said, everybody calls you Bob. He says, well, that's what I've been told I'm to be identified while I'm here on Earth. My name, I'm told, is Bob, but that isn't really who I am. It's just what I do as a convention to get through life. And I'm listening to this man say this. And, if it wasn't Bob Proctor, you'd say, this guy's kind of crazy. And he says, we're all just energy. It animates my body. He says, I love me. I love who I am. I'm grateful for this body, that it has health, that it's got vigor, and it's got vitality, and it's attractive body. He says, I'm grateful for all of that, but it's not me. This will be left behind at some point. And he says, and I will go on to something else. He says, we're all energy, and we cannot be destroyed, and we cannot be anything other than changed. But we will always be, because we are. And he says, and I'm not talking religion here, I'm just talking facts and science. The interviewer didn't know where to go. He kind of stop the tape. And he said, you want to change anything you just said? He says, no, why? He says, it's the most profound thing I've ever listened to. And Bob says, just keep asking your questions. So look, I celebrate his life. I celebrate the fact that I've been blessed to have actually been in the physical presence of Bob Proctor several times in my life. There are people who I know are a member of Proctor Gallagher Institute, who are graduates of their programs, who have become certified, Bob Proctor trainers, etc. God bless you for going through those efforts and enduring. Bob Proctor, I think, is going to be one of those legends that is never going to die. He's a man who understood the ancient wisdoms. And I'm eternally grateful that he came into my life in this existence and had such an impact and influence on me. And, if I remember right, his book was You Were Born to Be Rich. If you've never read it, go read it. That's all I have to say on this. I am so happy, grateful in my life that real giants have blessed me with their presence, their wisdom, and their knowledge. And Bob Proctor is really right up there at the top of the list. Hope you all have a good day. Go out and win. Thanks.